Hi everyone, this is Debbie. Welcome to the Sane Progressive. This is the video that I can't get made. My video I did on Facebook is gone. It didn't post. And I have been trying to get this video feed to load. And I'm just, if you've seen this content before, bear with me. I want to get this video done just as a form of documentation about what is going on as the history of 2016 and the crime and the election fraud is being rewritten. The story that got me wanting to do this video, and forgive me, I know this is a bit redundant for people who have been paying attention, but I really want you to get this out to your family and friends and share this with as many people as possible, because right now there is a mass rewriting of history going on. There is a cover-up of a crime that occurred in 2016. This cover-up has been led by Bernie Sanders, who would be considered the victim of the crime, right? But it's actually the American people and the constituents and the people who were stupid enough to give him $270 million who were the real victim of the crime. Because Sanders was hired as the Democratic outreach coordinator for the Democratic Party. And one of the things he has done in that role is go across the media, and many, many times, I can give you a compilation of him saying this and selling this to the media, is that Russia interfered with the elections in 2016. He's an accomplice to this. He is an absolute accomplice to this. And I am so absolutely appalled because over the past couple of weeks, we have seen the introduction of a 9/11 style commission where they're going to investigate the Russian interference into the 2016 election. It was an internal crime, and this story has been made up of whole cloth. There is not one piece of tangible, objective evidence that has been given to actually prove a single claim that they are making around this. And so what I want to tell you guys is I'm trying to document how they're rewriting history in real time. Because this is an old story, but it's all of the news for the past 2 weeks has been nothing but these false claims. Russia targeted election systems in 21 states, successfully hacking some. This is a video I did on March 24th, 2016. Bernie Sanders supporters in upcoming primary states must double check their registration status. This came after a change.org petition where I had been documenting the problems with the 2016 election. I had written this, and this was the video I did in companion to it. Serious concern about, I wrote in the petition at the time, there is serious concern about purge voter rolls, with voters in every primary state thus far reporting incidents where individuals were either removed from the rolls or did not have the registration update changes in status that would have allowed them to participate in the 2016 Democratic primary. Florida and Arizona were the most egregious in voters reporting removal from the rolls, with many citizens being denied the vote entirely or only allowed to vote on provisional ballots, which later were not counted. Additionally, in Arizona, we witnessed mass suppression of the vote as the state provided only 60 polling places for participation, in contrast to the 200 that were available for the 2012 uncontested Democratic primary election. The mainstream media news predicted a victory for Clinton, with available exit polling data indicating a Sanders win, and thousands of voters still waiting in line to cast a vote. This reeks of wag the dog politics, and we have zero faith that the outcome in Arizona is any way indicative of the actual results of the election. If you read today's story about the voter hacking, voter registration hacking, they have changed the timeline, and they are reporting that this was this story began in October 2017, and secretaries of state are reporting that they just are finding out about this now. It's a load of shit. I've been reporting on this story since it first came out, and that was, I believe, in June of 2016 when it was first announced publicly, and that was all over. So they have changed the timeline, stating that they were first made aware of this in October. That it first came to light in October, and then the secretaries of state saying that they were just informed of it in June. So it's a documented lie, the timeline they're given. I have stories, and you can look at the stories where they have reported on this in the late spring, early summer of 2016. Here is me. Here is me. Oh, I was so young and so innocent. Mere sprig of a girl. Here is me screaming about this. This video was made about the voter registration rolls being flipped and purged and affecting Sanders supporters. And this video is dated March 24th, 2016, and it is entitled, "Bernie Sanders supporters in upcoming primary states must double-check registration status." This is Debbie. Welcome to The Sane Progressive, the YouTube video series that seeks to inject some sanity into modern American political dialogue. Lots of important follow-ups on the ongoing election discrepancies and irregularities that are occurring in the Democratic presidential primary in 2016. I want to let you know I did do a follow-up petition to Bernie Sanders' campaign after I did yesterday's video call out to the campaign to urge Senator Sanders to act on the election problems and issues that we are seeing occur in primary states across the country. If you would like to sign and read that petition, it is in the video description below. And if you agree with its premise, I urge you not only to sign, but comment on the petition to let Bernie Sanders' campaign know why you think it is so important that the campaign act. Please Twitter it directly to the campaign and to your followers on Twitter. Please share it on Facebook. Please email it to your friends. We have, I think, over 6,000 signatures in less than 10 hours, but we need really tens of thousands of signatures for the campaign to take this petition seriously. So anything you can do to help to get the word out would be much appreciated in this effort. Another very important thing that is coming up right now is voters in primary states who are now double-checking their registration after we witnessed the vote purging that occurred in Arizona. We see voters being thrown off the rolls in Florida and other primary states who have voted. Very dramatic in Florida and Arizona, however. We saw literally thousands upon thousands of people, longtime registered Democrats, no longer on the voting rolls. We saw new voters who the registrations didn't show up on the voter rolls. We saw people changing their party affiliation to vote for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary, not showing up on the voting rolls. And this was a huge red flag to many people in upcoming primary states. They wanted to make sure that their registration was still in good standing and they were not purged from the voting rolls. And what we are finding, I got reports from over 24 people yesterday who had double-checked their voter registration in Wisconsin and New York, that when they went to double-check their registration, they were no longer on the voting rolls. Very disturbing. So if you are in an so as you could see, that was me screaming in March, the end of March of 2016, as we witnessed mass voter roll purging and flipping. 4 days later, Michelle Reagan testified in Arizona that election fraud had occurred and that she witnessed somebody in her staff, one of her employees, had their voter registration flipped. So that went on there. So what we are witnessing now, when that happened, there was a petition that was signed through the White House. I think it got 250,000 signatures demanding an investigation into the election fraud that occurred in Arizona, that the Secretary of State, Michelle Reagan, testified occurred on March 31st. There was a 250,000 people who demanded an investigation into this voter registration roll purging. There was nothing done about it. Against the advice of his own election attorney, Chris Souter, Sanders moved forward to certify bogus results that should never have been certified. So he went against his own election attorney's advice to certify the results. And now, 2 years later, we are seeing reports with a false timeline saying that there has been voter registration roll hacking by Russia. Based on nothing. There is absolutely not one piece of evidence given to substantiate these claims. They just say it's Russia. Apparently, Vladimir Putin really wanted Hillary Clinton to win the primary, because the people who had reported in state after state after state this mass purging were Senator Sanders voters. The people who were purged by 250,000 off the rolls in Brooklyn alone were reported to be Senator Sanders voters. What is happening now is there is this incredible rewrite of history with these stories that were totally ignored in real time, and not investigated in real time, and not addressed in real time. Now there is this retroactive rewriting of history. So it's not just a cover-up. It is a means and mechanism of their moving forward to implement a more total way to control and commit fraud. Because what happened is this was internal. These voter registration rolls, if you look at my video, we'll watch the brief clip. The IP addresses that were showing up on the voter registration rolls, unauthorized, were not coming from Russia. It was reported by, I think, 9 different secretaries of state that those were coming from the Department of Homeland Security, who is now making these accusations that Russia did this. Department of Homeland Security election hacking scandal expands to more states. This was back in December 2018.
Around important primary dates and during the election, Kentucky identified the Department of Homeland Security address trying to access its voter roll system on the night of the election. All right, so let's look at this, just this brief report.
I'm Trevita Moore. We broke news on Twitter today that Kentucky and West Virginia trace possible cyber attacks to the same U.S. Department of Homeland Security IP address found in a similar attempt in Georgia. Channel 2's investigative reporter Aaron Diamond talked exclusively with Georgia's Secretary of State, who is very concerned. Aaron joins us now live from Midtown Atlanta. Aaron.
Jovita, secretaries of state offices run state election systems, and as the scope of this story grows, so does the number of questions, a lot of red flags that remain unresolved.
We need somebody to dig down into this story and figure out exactly what happened.
Another demand for answers from Georgia Secretary of State Brian Kemp to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. On Thursday, we confirmed election agencies in West Virginia and Kentucky have also traced suspected cyber attacks on its networks in November to the same DHS IP address Kemp's office already linked to a massive, unauthorized vulnerability scan of his agency's firewall that same month.
So now this just raises more questions that haven't been answered about this, and continues to raise the alarms and the concern that I have.
Through an open records request, we got a hold of the results of a survey Kemp asked the National Association of Secretaries of State send to its members. West Virginia wrote back, this IP address did access our election night results on November 7th, 2016. Kentucky responded, the same IP address did touch the Kentucky online voter registration system on one occasion, November 1st, 2016. In a letter this week, DHS Secretary Jay Johnson told Kemp the department sourced the mid-November activity in Georgia to a federal contractor conducting what he called normal internet searches on the Secretary of State's website. The problem for Kemp,
we haven't been able to recreate this the way they've explained it to us.
told us DHS has yet to explain at least 9 other suspected network scans linked to DHS IP address over the last year on or around important primary and presidential election dates in Georgia. Kemp's call for answers amplified now by the National Association of Secretaries of State.
It's important to note that the Department of Homeland Security did not deny that those attacks were coming from their system. Because, we're talking about this, and it is, they often, when hackers do an attack, they will use a cover address, or they will try to divert it to make it look like somebody else is doing the attack. Interesting with this, that the Department of Homeland Security actually said, no, it came from an internal vendor, and they did not deny that these were originating from within the Department of Homeland Security. So there has been no denial that these infiltrations occurred. Just the official explanation as to why. So the narrative has been going that Russia interfered with the United States election system. 3 weeks before the inauguration, the Department of Homeland Security overtook the critical infrastructure of elections against the Constitution. This does not allow the Department of Homeland Security to run the elections. That power will still lie with the state, but it does something much more sinister. It gives the Department of Homeland Security control over the infrastructure around elections, machinery, any of the meetings, and the public discussion can now be closed, and it can be cut off so that only the Department of Homeland Security and the private sector can have the meeting to decide about how implemented. If you go to the U.S. 2016 presidential election was indeed hacked and it was not Russia, there is about 30 links that give some of the core information of what people need to know. If you go to Homeland Security designates election infrastructure as critical despite backlash from states, that was January 6, 2017. So they are basically doing, they gave the Department of Homeland Security the control over this infrastructure on a lie. It is not because that they had any evidence that Russia actually did any of this. It is the cover-up story. And interesting to note that, and this is linked in this video to this story, is Jay Johnson on a call with the other secretaries of state when the secretaries of state asked him outright if he had any evidence that Russia had interfered with the election. He told those secretaries of state no, but then made the case to the public that we had to make this move with the Department of Homeland Security overtaking the critical infrastructure because Russia had interfered with the election. So he contradicted himself from what he had told his own secretaries of state. Everything that you see that is being presented around our elections is nothing to do with what actually happened in 2016. It is around protecting our elections from foreign interference. This is the rationale that they are giving for this plan that was put out. And this is the plan. If you want to know how they're going to move forward to seize more and full control and be able to implement their cheat more effectively, you can read the report, Securing Elections from Foreign Interference. So this is a seizure. The Department of Homeland Security is putting forth a false narrative, and this report talks about the recommendations about how this is going to how they're going to institute the control. And what they're doing is very clear. They are selling the need for the Department of Homeland Security to move forward. They're going to try and sell new voting machines that are going to be needed to update, to protect ourselves. There are going to be paper ballots. Paper ballots are 100% totally meaningless when the goon squad, the Department of Homeland Security, has control over the voter storage locations, and they and you do not have full independent audits by independent third-party organizations, you are not going to get any kind of audit. Paper ballots are going to be the big thing that they're going to put out. It's like, oh, you're going to have paper ballots that aren't going to mean a thing without all these other variables to ensure that those kind of counts would be independent and fairly overseen. The entire thing is put under the control of this. After 20 years of knowing that our machines are highly vulnerable, for university studies to have revealed it, for Europe to ban the machines that are used in the United States because they're so susceptible to hacking, all of a sudden there is this big reveal at DEF CON where a bunch of hackers were hired by Jake Braun, who is a Department of Homeland Security insider guy for 15 years, and they are now exposing all of this stuff to the public. Like, the Department of Homeland Security didn't know these vulnerabilities existed on the machines for the past 20 years? Ever since they were implemented? Of course they did. Now they're just revealing them to the public so that there can be a sentiment that we need to invest in a whole new machinery. So the Department of Homeland Security is actively revealing how the vulnerabilities that we've known about for 2 decades. The media, which has refused to report on this issue for 2 decades, is now all of a sudden, when they didn't report on all this stuff happening in the election, and nothing was said during the election about voter registration roll flipping, well, now the Department of Homeland Security is coming out, and it's all over the media. The reason it's all over the media is because this is the marching orders from the owners. The Department of Homeland Security is putting the call out. And you see Jake Braun from the CIA, which interfered with 81 elections around the globe. We have the proof from the WikiLeaks documents, now coordinating to say that we need to develop this new election system to protect ourselves from North Korea, Iran, and Russia. And they're going to move forward, and they're going to put in a new and more covert and more total system of control and cheat. And they are going to sell it on the Russia lie. They are covering up a crime. They are making up a story. They are doing this aided and abetted by Senator Sanders, who has been one of the lead people as the most trusted politician in the country. When Senator Sanders says that Russia interfered with the elections in 2016, he is using the trust that he has from his supporters and constituents to lie to them, and to get along and to go along with believing a narrative that is being used to ensure that the establishment power can continue to commit crimes against the citizens in elections. So Sanders has become one of the lead salesmen of the lie that is being used so that there can be a more thorough and total means of controlling the elections instituted by the Department of Homeland Security, which is an unconstitutional organization. They have not just usurped election infrastructure. They have usurped basically the entirety of every major infrastructure segment in the United States. They have control over it. This takes the authority and oversight outside of Congress, and it also circumvents court oversight. Basically, we have been in a state of a suspended constitution since 2001. But they're moving forward to do this. And what is happening right now is they are rewriting history. They are covering up a crime. They are ensuring that they are going to be able to more fully cheat and install the people that they want in. It's a game. It's a very, very elaborate game of theater. It's an old game of theater. And until people can wake up to how they're being played across the spectrum, done. We're done. There is done. Anyways, if you want to understand more fully what happened, there is a video for every state that I've done, and there is a election petition that does this. And at this point, I'm so disgusted with watching Sanders be like uplifted as this kind of progressive champion. I'm no